I believe
Yes, I did.
talk to children about.
It's not a game where it's protected.
From a father's point of view,
That's a good question.
It does have very good dialogue, a good story.
So I believe it's
check his computer.
You have like a curriculum.
don't teach them how to plan that money.
The culture of our school really need to learn about other cultures.
Good evening and welcome to the monthly Black Voice Hertfordshire community meeting for October. We would especially like to welcome our speaker, Glenn Russell, to this meeting. Glenn will be talking to us about the Black community and institution, your rights, support and accountability. Before we begin, here are our house rules. Please remain muted at all times apart from when you're contributing. Please use the virtual Zoom hands up button to give notification that you would like to contribute, or write your question or comment in the chat box. Due to the specific, can anyone else hear that? Michaela, you look confused. Can you hear the background noise?
Yeah, I can hear it. I think it might be coming from Glenn.
Oh, we can't hear you talking, Glenn.
It's ironic because everybody else is muted, but we can't hear him at all now.
No, I can't hear anything. Oh no.
Glenn, we can't hear you. You're silent. Do you want to? Might need to log back in again.
Hello? Hello?
Ah,
Oh, there you are.
working. Okay. Due to the specific nature of this space, please refrain from using any and all known and unknown ethnic group acronyms and words. Please wait for a contribution to end before you contribute. Raised voices over a contribution is not permitted. Please do not swear or use foul language. And please place all contact information, events, projects of your organisation, etc. that you wish to share in the chat. Black Voice Letchworth is on many social media platforms. We are on Facebook, Tumblr, Pinterest, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and LinkedIn under the name Black Voice Letchworth. On Snapchat and Twitter with the username @BlackVoiceL. And we have a website at www.blackvoiceletchworth.com. Our contact number is 07581 720032. And our emails are blackvoiceletchworth@gmail.com and bvlinquiries@gmail.com. All of the places where you can find us online will be posted into the chat. A link to a form where you can provide feedback about Black Voice Hertfordshire community meetings will also be in the chat. If you don't receive our reminder emails for Black Voice Hertfordshire meetings or the minutes and recordings of these meetings, please feel free to use the other link in the chat to tell us your email address. This is not mandatory, but there are quite a few people who attend that we don't know how to contact. If you would like to donate, our PayPal is blackvoiceletchworth@gmail.com and our fundraiser is at www.blackvoiceletchworth.com. But this information will also be in the chat. Black Voice Letchworth now has services ready to order, including Princess Tea, the One Woman Black History Show, the One Drop Rule, adult dance classes, and event entertainment. We also have free services available, so please do check out our social media to get involved. I'm now happy to hand over to Glenn Russell.
Thank you, Amy. Hopefully everyone can hear me.
Yep.
Excellent. So in terms of my bit around the Black community, knowing your rights when dealing with the police and so forth, we can do this in two ways. We can do it one way where I go through different bits in terms of stop and search, your rights, where you can find support, accountability, where we if you believe that you've had an interaction with the police that you weren't happy with, where it is that you can take that to in terms of complaint. Or we can throw it out, questions can be raised, and then I can go through those. So it's up to yourselves rather than it become just a 10-minute me talking through things. So how would you best like use of the 10 minutes before question and answers in general? Do you want me just to go through what I've got and then we'll pick up there? Okay then, so no, you're right. One of the things that Michaela touched on when we were discussing me doing this piece about a month or so ago was around the uncertainty regarding stop and search and what were our rights in terms of that. What can we do? What can we expect? So if I just take you through from start to finish, and then I'll answer any questions on that. So one of the things is that what's the grounds for the police to stop and search someone? And, you know, if I'm just walking down the road, can they just stop me and ask to search myself and whatever other bags that I may have? And it is a grave concern that certainly members of the Black community have. So the term is the officer must have a reasonable grounds for suspicion that the person is in unlawful possession of or has unlawfully attained an article. So an article in essence can be termed as a bladed article, so it's a knife. And the other one is if the individual they believe is a terrorist or to prevent an act of terrorism. But what's really important is that if you're an individual who may have committed previous crimes and is known to the police officer or law enforcement, that isn't enough grounds for them to stop an individual. So if they have had interaction with an individual previously, irrespective of what the outcome of that interaction is, and they see me walking down the road, that's not probable cause or reasonable grounds for them to stop and search me. What they've got to have is the reasonable suspicion also cannot be formed on an individual's age, race, or sex alone. And there must be some more specific information or intelligence that they've been provided. And in those cases, the officer must comply with several guidelines prior to and during a stop and search. And the officer must tell the person the grounds for the search. The officer must inform them of the object of the search. So why is the officer carrying out the search? So is it to find drugs? Is it an offensive weapon, etc.? So they can't just stop you on a whim and going on a fish hunt, a fishing trip. The officer must show the person their warrant card if they're in plain clothes or requested. So if I ask to see their warrant card, they have to show it to me before they commence their search. They must also tell me their identity. So it's not enough to just show me their card. They have to tell me their identity. So that's their full name. And also they must tell me the station that they are attached to. And that's really important. We'll come on to that in a moment. And also the officer must tell me that I'm being detained for the purpose of the search. And again, that is really important. So all stops and searches must be carried out with courtesy. consideration and respect for the person concerned, and the length of time for which a person or vehicle may be detained must be reasonably kept to a minimum. And the overarching guide for the stop and search is aimed at preventing crime. So they have to have a reasonable belief that you have something on you that either you've appropriated it following a crime or you are about to commit a crime. Does anyone have any questions on that?
Yes, Glenn. Hi, it's Sonia. I
Hi,
just
Sonia.
want disproportionality. All those things you've said, that's an ideal word. Okay, but we know in reality it doesn't always happen, especially to black young men.
Okay.
Okay.
But that's the guidelines. That's
Yes.
how they should behave. And if they are non-compliant in any of those areas, then it gives us grounds to complain.
So I always wonder how IC1 becomes IC3. Basically, they've had intel that a suspected Caucasian young man, and then all of a sudden they're stopping a black young man. So that's a question I always ask that, and I always look at the stop and search figures, and they're disproportionate against black people.
And you're quite right, because the officer, if asked, well, why are you stopping me? As I said there, they have to explain the grounds for the stop and search. So if the basis on their information, it's an IC1, but then I'm an IC3 and they're stopping me, that's the question that I'm going to ask. How are you stopping me when I don't match what you've just told me in terms of description? How is it that, what grounds do you believe that I have an article concealed or I have drugs concealed when all you've seen me doing is walking down the road? So where's your grounds for the search?
And then I sometimes have to say to our young men, they mustn't be too mouthy because they'll use it against them.
But again, as I said, it's within our rights to ask, what are the grounds for the search? Why have you stopped me? And why is it that you want to search me? That's not being mouthy. That's within my rights to ask that question.
Yeah.
I'm not being belligerent. I'm not being flippant. I'm exercising my right.
Yeah, you're entitled to that. And then also there are some police forces who have stop and search cards, which know your right cards. So it tells you bit by bit what should happen and what your rights are, and you should get the badge number.
Yes, and I'll come on to that in terms of every stop and search, the officer has to fill out a form. So the officer or officers fills out the form and you are entitled to have a copy of that form. So if the officer is using a paper record of the stop and search, I should be handed a copy of that form at the time that I was stopped. And if they use an electronic one, then I have 3 months from the date of the stop and search to obtain a copy of the form. And here's the big one in terms of getting the officer's name, badge number, and the station that they are attached to, is because for me to get a copy, I have to go to that station to obtain a copy of the form. And if they're using an electronic one, electronic means to record it, then they should hand me a receipt of the record. But also, I can ask for both an electronic and a paper copy as well.
Another thing I always say, sorry to interrupt.
It's okay.
Make sure you get the date, the time, and where you are.
Yes.
So many people go to a police station. I can't remember the date. Okay.
All the time.
Yeah, and that is, yeah. So that works against them. So I always say this is what you could do. Why, what, and when.
And the thing is also, if I'm asking you for your name and badge number, then what's the point of me asking you if I'm not going to record it? So whilst I'm recording that, we've all got smartphones with notes on it. We can record it on our phones, along with the date, the time, and the place. Okay.
Yeah. And also for that recording of your phone or from your phones, your friend's phone, you need to tell the police officer you are recording it.
Exactly.
You can't just, you to make it a legal document, you've got to tell them this is what you're going to do. Yes. That is very important, because I remember Will Smith said, I made a comment a couple of years ago. He said racism is not getting worse, it's getting recorded.
Yes. It's not going under the bridge anymore, not floating under the table, because more and more people are recording and reporting it. But also having the courage to challenge correctly. And one of the points up there is where the officer has to tell the individual that they are being detained for the purpose of a search. Now, we can refuse to be searched. However, at that point, the officers do have the right to forcibly, within reason, search us. But again, until the point where we say, I am refusing you to search me, I'm denying you to search me, they cannot forcefully do that. But once we say, no, I'm refusing to give you permission to search me or my personal belongings, at that point, they have the authority to forcibly search us. And then we've got the other one, which is when you look at stops. So you've got stop and search and you've got stop. So stop is defined where an officer asks the person to account for their actions, behaviour, presence in an area or possession of anything. So the person stopped will not have to give their name or address, nor their ethnicity, unless it is the policy of that particular police force to record it. But police officers no longer have to make a record of all the stops and are not required to provide a receipt either. And the officers are required to inform the person who they are and give their name, collar number, what station they belong to. And if I'm dissatisfied with how they have treated me, then I can raise an issue with their local police force. So again, in terms of going back to our saying around if I refuse to be searched, what they're saying, what the rules are is cooperation would be sought in every case. even if I initially object to the search. And it's only then a forcible search may be made only if it has been established that I am unwilling to cooperate or resist. And they then can use reasonable force as a last resort, if necessary, to conduct a search or to detain myself or my vehicle for the purposes of search. So that's in terms of our rights when we're out and about, and if we're approached by the police who want to either stop us, to ascertain where we've been, what we've been doing, and so forth, or if they believe they have reasonable grounds and they wish to search us and our personal belongings. And going on to Sonia's point, if we feel that they have acted inappropriately, then if you look at Section 12 of the Police Reform Act, which states that a complaint may be made by any of the following. So a member of the public who claims that the conduct took place in relation to him or her, a member of the public who claims to have been adversely affected by the conduct, even though it did not take place in relation to him or her. So if my son was walking down the road and was treated badly and then came home and it then impacted on myself, I could make a claim to that because I've been adversely affected. And then also a member of the public who claims to have witnessed the conduct, or lastly, a person acting on behalf of someone who falls within any of the categories above. And in terms of what we can complain about, we can make a complaints against the police if we have experienced inappropriate behaviour from a police officer or member of the police staff. For instance, if I felt that they were rude or aggressive in their treatment of me, or I witnessed in person an incident where a police officer or a member of the police staff acted inappropriately, or if I've been adversely affected by the conduct of the police officer or member of police staff, even if it did not take place in relation to myself. And then in terms of who we complain to, there's the Independent Office for Police Conduct, where they've got a website that we can make a complaint there. We can email, we can make a complaint to our local MP, and then there are solicitors who deal specifically with police complaints. But the onus is on us too. If we're going to complain, we've got to do it within 12 months, because after such time, the police can decline to deal with our complaint unless we can provide a very good reason as to why it's taken us so long. And in terms of just finishing off there, and this was a headline in The Guardian, January 21, so January of this year. And there's fewer than 10 police officers are fired after gross misconduct finding. So it is incredibly difficult to get a police officer who we believe, or who it is believed, has behaved misconductly, and then goes through and is found guilty, to be fired. So I think one of the things that we've got to do in terms of equipping our young people is managing expectations. and in order not to put themselves in harm's way in terms of how they behave when approached by the police, as we've said before. So, any questions?
Must also complaints, take it to a stage 1 complaint. So it's logged then.
Yes.
Because even if it's declined at stage 1, you have the right to go to a stage 2. And that can take the year.
Yes. And that's the thing, it's if something happens, it's getting it reported as soon as possible, and getting it reported when it's fresh in everyone's minds.
And we mustn't forget the police authority.
Yes.
The police and crime commissioner.
Mm.
Yeah. The reason why I said I sit on my local police board.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm not really sure if I'm their best friend or their enemy, but hey, I sit, you know, but I'm the challenging friend. You know, I will give praise where praise is due, but I'm the first one to say, hey, come on.
You're their conscience.
A big prick, yep. Yeah. I remind them, you know, because you know, to be truthful, when they use that word disproportionality, it makes me cry. And that was in the 60s, is disproportionality, and then the 70s, the sus law. And then the Brixton riots in the 80s, and the 20s, we're still happening, really? Come on. This shouldn't be, and body cams aren't mandatory. It's just if the officer remembers to put it on.
And there's no action against the officer, because the reason that they were introduced was A, to protect the officers against false allegations, and B, they were able to capture information in real time, which would then either help to exonerate or to assist in the prosecution. And if you take, it's funny you should bring that up, Sonia. We had the wife of a colonel, or whatever his name is, was it in Bristol?
Yeah.
Who got convicted today, actually.
Yes, I saw that.
For murder.
18 years.
Yes. And one of the pertinent bits of evidence was the body cam.
Yes, it
and
was.
her reaction to when the officers arrived.
Yeah.
And her saying, well, if I don't go and help him because I've done it, cut him badly enough, or if I haven't, I should have done. Because then in court, the prosecutor showed her that, because she was trying, her defense was she couldn't remember saying it.
Or she was a battered wife was another one.
Exactly. So without that footage, they would have struggled to have found her guilty, because her defense was, whether it was self-defense, in that she was a battered wife. But more and more forces are leading towards ensuring that it's mandatory.
I think it should be.
Sorry, Michaela has her hand up.
Hello. I was just wondering, with everything you've said, Glenn, is there a step process that we can devise as Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
He's here. He's on there.
Okay.
Eat him.
Hey, Daddy, what do you write it?
Edwin, can you put yourself on mute, please?
Yes, I was wondering with the information you've given us, Glenn, could we possibly together devise some sort of steps for parents to advise their children when interacting with police, so they can remember not only their rights but how to keep safe as far as interaction. Maybe, I don't know, a 5-step plan, a 10-step plan, I don't know. So there's something simple that they can remember, that so we can say, you know, if you are approached, this is what you do, this is how you stand. So they can remember a step. So it goes step by step, because I think in that situation, whether you're old or young, it can be very traumatic. I was talking to someone in the Letchworth community today that was arrested, falsely arrested, and he was talking about having to be taken down to the local hospital, and you know, having to deal with all of that. I just think that you know, he didn't really talk about much aftercare, etc. And we want our children to feel very safe on the streets, like all children should feel safe. And I was just wondering if something like that can be devised from the information, because I think that at the moment, when you go onto the website, it's a lot of information, and I think a lot of the youth of today don't really want to kind of read all of that. But it could be, is this some sort of way we could devise something that can be quite simple, do you think, for them? Or
I think Sonia hit the nail on the head in terms of stop and search card.
Yeah.
That some forces have, that clearly outlines your rights and so forth.
Stop and search card. Where do you get one of those from?
Some police are. Well, I know that some police authorities use them. I will go through my notes, and I think one of them is Portsmouth. Well, I will confirm with you tomorrow. And what they have done, various members of the community, in conjunction with the police, have devised these cards and give them out to the local youth of their area. And basically,
and what exactly is on the card, Sonia?
it tells them what their rights are during a stop and search. Right. So first of all, you have to give your name, your address, and of course the collar number of the police officer. He needs to let you know his collar number, his name, and also, very importantly, what police station. Then he's got to read you while you're being detained. Very important, because if he doesn't do that, it's not legally binding. He's got to legally say, I'm detaining you under blah, blah, blah. And that's the reason why. And also, very importantly, if you're a female, a male officer must never search you.
Right. I heard, is it, correct me if I'm wrong, Sonia, but one of BVL's past members mentioned a story in connection with her network of a male police officer searching a female because there was no female officer present.
That should never happen. That should never happen.
That should never happen. So
never,
in the
event, there is no excuse. There's no excuse. That should never happen. Never.
So if a police officer says there's no female officer present, I'm going to search you.
No, he can't. He cannot do that. No. Full stop. No.
And similarly, with a juvenile or not disadvantage, a vulnerable adult who's in police custody, and they believe that the person may have secreted drugs, a weapon, whatever, again, they cannot search them without having an appropriate adult there. So everything stops. They can't, they put them on constant watch, but they cannot search them until that person gets there.
In that note, I want to ask, in the event a police officer, I think we briefly spoke about this when we spoke. Okay, mums are at the park, the police are searching for a child that matches the description of a child, say it's, they're looking for a black child, but the police officer comes up to one of the children without the parent present and starts asking the child questions. Is that legal?
Is the child under
So
18?
the child is I think it was 7, 8.
No,
Not.
because it's a
Right.
minor. It's a minor. You can only question a minor in the presence of an appropriate adult. So whether
So-
that be their legal guardian
Right.
or someone else who's there with them.
Mm-hmm.
So a
you
police
cannot
officer
approach.
can't be, they're searching around the park and just go up to a child and say, "What's your name? Where do you live?"
No,
Right. You see, this is where we need to start talking and knowing our rights, because that happened to me, and I just assumed because he was a police officer, he was allowed to do it. And it was only because I saw how scared my little one was, because he thought he did something wrong. I then had to run up and say something wrong, and they said, "Oh, we're looking for a black boy." So you're looking for a black boy or a mixed race boy? Well, black boy, but my son's obviously of mixed heritage, but won't go down that road. That's another day. But it's good to know. It's good to know. Thank you. Sonia, could I ask, on the stop and search card, is there is as well as saying what your rights are and what to expect in a stop and search, is there also a place to complain of where people know where they can?
Or it boils down to, for each force, it's what you want on your form. Because you've got to remember, it's got to be something that's put in a pocket. It can't be lengthy.
Yeah.
Right.
it's like a business card.
Yeah, so it's got to be sharp and sweet.
Right.
Michaela, do you know who the PCSO is for Letchworth?
I was told at some point, but we've been so focused working with the commissioner. The answer is no, at the top of my tongue, if I'm honest with you.
That's
Val,
who I
do you
would.
know?
That's who I would suggest that.
Now,
As Sonia would say.
Yeah.
That's who I would suggest that you bring in to formulating the card.
Okay.
Because that's the person who, or persons that are going to be, majority of the time, interacting with the young people of Letchworth in and around the town. So they're the ones to bring on board in order to design and get the right details down onto the card.
Right. Yeah, because I think this is the area we most get the most complaints across the board, all ages, primarily men, and concerns for their young men and for our senior men as well, and not much information on what their rights are, and that's where more of the fear bills and the huge fuel of mistrust, because I think those rights are there to protect us, like they are to protect everybody, and it's important that we know what they are, and that it can be easily accessed. Because one thing I found as a parent going on, when I speak to a police officer and I tell them, they're like, "Oh, just go onto the website." There's so much stuff on the website, you just don't know where to go to search, because it's not very clear, and there's a lot of information and jargon to digest, and if you don't know the jargon, you kind of just get fed up. That's why these cards are really good. So I definitely will be contacting and finding out. Val, I don't know if you can help with that. If you can help, who is our local? But you're on mute, Val.
Yeah, I'd love to help.
Yes, please, to find out who our get these cards, because in Letchworth, I think it would really help a lot of mums and dads. Just help, because my son's coming up to that age now, so I'm just a bit concerned.
Right.
Can I interact here? What I say to the young men and women, and it's a poem going back to the 17th century, and I say to them, the pen is mightier than the sword. You have to educate yourself. It's not enough not to know your rights. You need to know the Macpherson report, the Lammy review. You need to be educated. You need to know. If you don't understand, right, there are enough police meetings happening around that you as a member of the public can attend via Zoom, Teams, or in person at the moment. So you have that opportunity to tell them how you feel about stop and search, because how are they going to know about this negativity or this disproportionality if you do not tell them? I know, and that's what these young men and women, no excuses.
What are the meetings, Sonia? You mentioned the meetings, the police. Yes. What kind of meetings they have that we can
stop and search
meetings?
Yes. Okay. Every they're bi-monthly.
Oh my.
You need to be there. Am I right? Am I right,
I've never heard of them.
Yes, I've never heard of that in my life.
My local authority have them, and I was on one on Wednesday, and I was vocal.
Which is your authority, Sonia?
I'm Wiltshire, Val.
Oh, thank you. I'll follow that up.
Yeah.
Yes, please, Val.
And then you have the opportunity to sit under the Crown Prosecution Service. They have various committees. So all what you're raising here, okay, you need to be sat around that table where these law enforcement officers and the judges, the defending prosecutors sit. Because you need to tell them this is what is happening on your doorstep.
Yeah.
They may not know. I can't speak for you because I have to admit I don't know Hertfordshire.
Yes.
But what you need to do is I'm going to go back again and say the pen is mightier than the sword.
That's why we're kind of. It's so good that we have Sonia and other partners working with us, because I've never heard of this, and if you didn't share it tonight, Sonia, I would never have known.
No, my local authority has quite a few meetings. Has quite a few. Stop and Search meets bi-monthly. There's an independent advisory group where members of the community sit and help the police. They give us paperwork. We dot the I's, we cross the T, we look at the figures, we look at the stats.
Kirsty, are you listening to this?
Yes, I am.
Oh, good. Because you're going to be on it.
Yeah.
as accountability officer.
Yeah, I'm on a Stevenage Council set up a race and equality commission that's meant to be in conjunction with the police. I found out last week that apparently some meetings have been going on, but my invite has not actually come through for them, so I'm trying to get that chased up. But yeah, supposedly something similar is kind of going on around here.
Yeah. We need to get on that, because I think there needs to be conversations and just awareness and contribution to kind of care. Because I went to a meeting, it was kind of a national meeting over the last couple of weeks about around a similar subject, an off subject, but similar subject. And there was talk about what the aftercare was for the Black community when they have interactions with the police, because obviously there are statistics there that shows that some of the aftercare needs to be specific to our community due to certain disparities, and obviously again we're finding that different areas and different stations do things differently. So you'll get varied, you know, areas doing things in a different way, or actually not doing things at all. But there wasn't much in the aftercare, as far as I think that's one thing that not just with the police. I think we're focused a lot on the police tonight because it's kind of the main subject nationally that's been at the forefront, but really I think disparity across the board. We're all not perfect, and we don't expect these institutions to be perfect. They will make mistakes at times, but when you do hold your hands up, it's important that there is some sort of aftercare. With BVL, for example, we've had some run-ins with institution that hasn't been the best light, but it says a lot what you do afterwards. No one's come back to us and said, has it affected you? How has it affected you? How has it affected your organization? Is there anything we can do to help? This is what we can do, or put someone in place that's actually going to follow procedure, how it should be followed, so that we have a positive experience with that institution. It was just left. And I think that's not healthy. It doesn't build trust. It doesn't build relationship. It just leaves things and writes things off, and it just generates more into the mistrust with the Black community. So I think that's something across the board. I think those in institution can really take to really change within, is to just look at how when mistakes happen, and they will happen because you're not perfect, you're human beings, how you deal with that. And the aftercare is really important.
Michaela?
Yes.
I've just been Googling, following what Sonia said, and Hertfordshire Constabulary does have a community scrutiny panel.
There you are. Is that county or?
Hertfordshire Constabulary, so it's for county.
Hertfordshire
County.
It's county. It says a scrutiny panel made up of community representatives have been set up by the Police and Crime Commissioner's Office.
Yes, I have heard whispers of this. It was brought to my attention by David Lloyd, who is our Police and Crime Commissioner for Hertfordshire. There was, I can't remember what, he made us aware of the existence of it, and there were members of the Black community who were on that panel. I think he didn't know the exact amount or whatever, but I have to look into that, because I did ask the question and pose the question, if that was the case, why are the numbers so high? If Amy, I don't know if Amy can find the link to the stats for England. Actually, Black people are being stop and search at a disproportional rate, literally across the country.
You're 9 times more likely to be stopped.
Yes. So if on these scrutiny panels, this is actually happening, where we're having Black representatives on the scrutiny panels, and we're having these cards, and all of these great stuff is happening. Why are these numbers so high? It just doesn't make sense. If everything that you've said, that there is something for police to follow, a procedure, how things are done, why is it so high? Because if a police has an interaction with a member of the public and it's done incorrectly, I'm assuming there's a procedure where that's reprimanded, or that police officer is disciplined. So how is it that police officers are doing this across the board, across the country, and no one's doing nothing about it? They're just telling us about things that are already there, but are not actually making the changes to reduce these numbers.
Sorry to say that, but since the killing of George Floyd, things have been changed, and I liken it to dolly steps. It's not going to be an overnight fix. that I look at the stats this year, and there has been in quite a few forces a remarkable change around stop and search. And this scrutiny panel are now holding accountable the chief, the police officers, the DCC, things that never happened before. And the police and crime commissioner now has to answer to his constituents, say why this has happened, what are we going to do, and when are we going to do it by? It's not an easy journey. It's not going to be easy because it's not going to be fixed overnight. But if we don't sit around the table, it will not get fixed.
No. And also I also think the other struggle as well that I have found personally on this journey is that because there's a lot of damage that's been done and being done already with that relationship between the Black community and institution, it's actually stopping healing from happening, because the changes that needs to be made for a place of healing to happen isn't actually coming to manifestation. It's kind of we'll just carry on doing what we're doing. We hear you, but we're carry on doing what we're doing because that's how it's benefiting everybody. But we hear you. We hear you, but no change is being made, and it's done in the most polite way. But I just think that sometimes I feel that with institution, it comes across as if they're fearful of being specific, of when the disparity is clearly specific to one area of community within our environment. And they always try and turn it into, for all, or for all different groups. And I feel like that's great. We want everybody to feel safe in the country, but at the moment, there is a specific to the Black community. That's what we're talking about. And I feel that with them not being as specific in their approaches, they're actually causing themselves their own barriers, because what they're doing is devising ways and initiatives that are going to benefit all, but it's not affecting all. The statistics are saying it's affecting a specific group, which will mean whatever you devise will have to be created for a specific problem, basically, for a specific type of people. And if you're thinking about all different types of people, different types of cultures, whatever you devise is going to be completely different, and it may not fit the specific problem because it's not devised for the specific problem, and that's where your barrier is going to develop. That's what I found. I don't know if anyone else has found that, but yeah, that's what I found with the institution. I don't know why that is, if that's a fear or I don't know. I think, Amy, you had a question.
Yeah, it's less of a question. I don't know. So Glenn said earlier about that even when these officers get found guilty for misconduct, very few of them actually get fired, which I'm thinking is probably a lot of the reason why those statistics don't change, is because it seems like when we talk to people like David Lloyd, the police and crime commissioner, rather than saying, yes, we know these statistics are terrible, this is how we're going to change it, and we're sorry, it's more, like excuses get made for why the statistics are like that and why it's okay that they're like that. So I think there is a real lack of accountability. And Glenn said about managing people's expectations. And I think that we could do like as much of holding them accountable, going on these panels using the cards and things, and the statistics still wouldn't change. It's still worth doing all of that stuff. But I think also, Michaela, you said about the aftercare, and maybe think about where BVL slots into this. Maybe that is something that has to be independent from the police if the police are not going to provide it. So maybe it'd be useful to discuss at some point
It's
what
definitely
BVL
an
could do.
area. Yeah, it's we've talked briefly with Glenn. Those of you who watched last meeting or came to last meeting, you'll know Glenn is a professional in mental health, and we are discussing with him and how we can work together with working with police as far as supporting those who've had interaction with police around mental health, because it can be quite traumatic. And as far as I understand it, there are some places in England where they do offer mental health support if you needed to speak to a counsellor after you've had interaction, etc. But the Black community sometimes are reluctant to what the police or people who may be connected to the police. They're more likely to be trusting and more relaxed with an independent organization, which that has relationship that is connected or funded by hence BVL. So yeah, that's something that Glenn and BVL, I should say the Pathway hypnotherapy rooms, and are working towards, because I think it's definitely an area, while the change is happening that Sonia is talking about, that isn't going to happen overnight, that will take the time it needs to take for the change to happen. The Black community needs help now. There's people being harmed now, so we need to find ways of how we can support our community while that change is happening. So yeah, I think it's definitely an area that BVL are going to support with, and obviously Val's going to help us with the finding out who our local PSO is, so we can get the cards out to the community, so we can start advertising that, because I think that will be a great help. That's something that can be given out to the schools, and we, BVL can see if we can get some funding to have it free, or if we need any funding at all, if then maybe they'll give it to us free. I don't know how it works, but it's going to be free anyway. No one's paying for that. I'm sure it's something that's given free. Yeah, so that's great. Yeah, Glenn wanted to come in, I think. Yeah.
I think Sonia had her hand up first.
Mind a quickie. This happened in 2019, and it shows us that we still have a work in process. And I'm just going to throw this name in there to you. Some of you may know who she is, and some of you may not. Alexandra Wilson. And who is she? She's a top barrister who happens to be Black. And in October 2019, which is irony, was Black History Month, she was entering court. And as an entry to court, the security guard was looking down for her name down the list of the defendants. And she was dressed in a suit. She was carrying her wig and gown, and yet he looked for her name under the name of the defendant. And it gets worse, because that's just one thing. So, okay, she sorts that bit out. She goes to the court to speak to the prosecuting barristers, who are her allies, the same level as her, and they scream and shout at her, she's come to the wrong room. Okay, she's come to the wrong room. And I just want to know what part of her looked like she was the defendant, and that yet on entry into court, she was treated as the defendant. And again, she was walking in the court itself and was screamed at again, like she and this is a barrister, a Black barrister. So Everybody out here, look at Alexander Wilson. And that happened to her in 2019. And the cards, Michaelia, are free. You don't have to pay for them. The police will give them to you.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, good.
No problem. Thank you very much.
You know I love a freebie.
Right, excuse me, I do. There you are. Thank you all.
Thank you. Sorry, there was something really interesting in the chat. I don't know if anyone picked up on that. Someone put about Bedfordshire Council, Bedfordshire Scrutiny Panel, highly rated for their work. Montel Nouvelle is chair, and maybe
I know him.
Oh, you know him?
Mm.
Well, we need to get him. Bedfordshire Scrutiny Panel, highly rated. Yeah, I need to find out how it works with these scrutiny panels, because
you can invite him to your meeting, and
yes,
he can update you on what a scrutiny panel is.
Do you think you'll be able to get him to come and talk?
If you're gonna do some black cake and some tea or coffee, girl, he'll be there.
Brilliant. Because we need that.
To be truthful, an ally. I mean, I'm going to a conference in a couple of weeks' time, and the guest speaker is none other than Leroy Logan. And if anybody watched the Steve McQueen's program, Red, White and Blue, about the Metropolitan First Police Officer, and that's who Leroy Logan is, and he's a guest speaker. So yes, you can make a change. And as Gandhi said, in order to achieve change, you've got to challenge.
Yeah. Thank you, Dee, for sharing that, by the way. Thank you. This is why it's important to start connecting all over the country, because we need to help each other out, basically, with the information. Start sharing it, because we need to find it out, basically. I wanted to just ask about if anyone else from institution had anything to share. I know we focused a lot on the police tonight, but if there was anything, you know, with as far as, you know, hospitals or council, etc. I don't know if Val had anything to share. Is Val there still? Is Val?
I was just going to say the COVID rates amongst our children at school.
Okay, Val's gone.
And it's
Val's left, I think.
Oh, okay.
All right. I was just going to say the COVID rate amongst our children at schools, and it's high.
1 in 12.
Mm.
Wow. Why is that, do you think?
Social distancing, no masks, and also it could happen that the fact that children are infected outside of school and are bringing it in and passing it around.
But is that Black children?
No, it's
just general.
It's just general. But you see, you know, in the beginning, it was where I'm bringing it from. The fact that disproportionality, again, that word I hate, that blacks are more likely. I think it was nearly 8-point-something% more likely to be affected by it.
I see.
Yeah, it's quite high stats.
And they don't, I suppose they don't know why that may be.
No, they don't. And when you hear children at school, because I thought last year they said it wouldn't affect children, and now children are being infected, and whole school bubbles are being sent home.
Yeah. It's definitely around the winter hearing more people falling with COVID or catching COVID. So yeah, it's definitely yes. I don't know if it's on the, I don't want to say it's on the rise when I don't have any figures in front of me. But I definitely feel that I'm hearing more people saying, "Oh, I'm self-isolating," or "I've just come down with COVID," more than I was a month ago. And it seems the closer we get to Christmas, the more I hear things like that. So yeah, it's interesting to kind of go through. The only thing I would say about everything we've touched on with the police today, I think also I think it would be healthy for us to also expand that to the hospitals, particularly around maternity. It's one of the other areas that we hear from the Black community on getting support or not getting support within that area. They do have an organisation or organisations to support mothers within our local hospitals, one of which have approached us. But it really hasn't been very fruitful. I think it's due to these organisations primarily being voluntary. They have no funds to support what they need, support in a way that they need to get the information that they need to support our community. Because it's primarily either charity run or completely or just voluntary run groups. I think it's important that these hospitals actually build relationships with organisations that specifically deal with the Black community, because I find that with going through a third person or a third organisation, it can cause a barrier, because within that said organisation, they also have work to do around bias, around knowledge, around history. And when you're trying to share information about disparity around maternity, you find yourself having to explain certain things before you even get to sharing your story around disparity. You have to kind of go through questions like, oh, maybe they meant this, or actually, this is how the hospital works. Well, actually, they've been going through a lot recently, what with COVID. You find yourself going through a lot of barriers with excuses, and to them, I'm sure it doesn't seem as excuses. They're just trying to explain why possibly I had a bad experience, or someone else had a bad experience. But to the person sharing that quite traumatic experience around disparity, it can really cause a strong barrier, because it can stop them from sharing, because it acts as if they're not being heard. And I think that barrier I've noticed when you're using third-party organisations that the hospital uses to support women after they've had service from the hospital. I think it would work better to build relationships with groups and community groups that specifically deal with those communities, and just work from that sense. Otherwise, you'll have to then build a relationship with a third organisation, and then have that organisation build a relationship with the hospital on behalf of the Black community that don't really understand how the Black community works. It would just make sense to just build a relationship with us directly. That would be my only contribution around maternity. I don't know if anyone else had any contribution around that.
You mustn't just include maternity. You've got to think of all the other adult social care, children's services. Disproportionality again comes into it.
I have two things. So firstly, just in relation to what Sonia said about children's services, I don't think it's something we've really spoken about that much at previous Black Voice Hertfordshire meetings, but I happen to know quite a lot about adoption and things like that. And I think a lot of that is quite sketchy, because before they used to do something where if you were in a foster placement and you were a black child, they'd try as hard as they could to match you with black foster parents, which then a government, I think a government came in and decided that that was wrong, and now they don't do that anymore because I think it looks better. But then what you have is instances of black children being fostered by white families who don't understand the needs for their hair care, don't understand, they're disconnecting these children from their culture. And I think that's something that really, the adoptive parents in these situations and the foster parents are always seen as like, they're the guardian angel and they've rescued this person, but there's not much accountability on whether the care that they're providing is right for that child. And I think that's one area of disparity that it doesn't really get talked about that much, and I think it's really important. And also another institution is obviously education, and Sam sits on the board for some really important education thing, and I was just wondering whether there's been any progress, or what you've been discussing recently in trying to get Black in the British curriculum.
There are so many things going on. In terms of AQA, that's the exam board.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still working on the committee there, and I mean, any meeting that we've had, even when I keep quiet, they ask me, Sam, haven't you got anything to say about this? So, which is good, because I think it's now dawning on them that people are not listening to Black voices, and that's really coming out almost everywhere. I was just typing a note to another parent that I want the parent to apply to become like a governor in a school, so that it's really try to get people connected in all different areas that we need to be working at, because there are so many things to do, and there are so few people who wants to get involved. So it's nice to see about 15 people here tonight wanting to do something. So really, that's really encouraging. So that it's really cheering one another on this that we need, because sometimes it's tiring and it's as if you're just banging your head against so many barriers. So that it's really building one another up and cheering one another along the way. I think John wants to speak.
Sorry, I wasn't aware I was off mute. Yeah, I just wanted to touch on what Amy just said about adoption. It's a bit of a grey area, and I know this from experience because I've got two older brothers who are adopted, and it wasn't very good. That was my oldest brother, 47. It wasn't very good nearly 50 years ago, and it's still not great now. There are lots of people out there willing to adopt, but trying to get adequate people to match the needs of the child is not a fantastic area. And I know from experience, I don't think it's ever going to improve anytime soon, but they are working on it.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything to say?
Yeah, well, actually, I was made an inquiry on adopting because, I've always wanted to adopt, and I just made an inquiry at I think it's Hertfordshire Fostering and Adoption. I can't remember what it was called. And we went along to the meeting. I was really excited because it was a meeting to find out about adoption, about fostering, what would work with you, what you were looking for, your family, etc. And when we went to the meeting, we were all the children that were in the advert were all Black children that were advertised. So we thought, oh, great, this is an opportunity that we can really bless a child, etc. With our family. And when we went there, all the people that were there were were probably, I would say, in their seasoned years, and all white. And I thought it was very strange because I thought,
Like I said, it hasn't improved in the last 50 years.
no, it hasn't. And I don't know, it's very strange to me, because I just feel like, if you're affluent, a black person, they'll probably, maybe possibly consider you, but if the idea, I got the feeling, or we got the feeling, went to the meeting, that they really wanted a white male, a white female, both affluent, with lots of money. And I understand why that is, I'm assuming, because the richer you are, the more you can provide for the child, aesthetically. But I really wish they would have put that on the poster. That's, I just felt that, they didn't see the value. They weren't really looking in the value of race or culture.
No.
They were just looking at, I don't know. It felt really bad. What I'm trying to say in a very political way, when you've lived in a country where in most spaces that you live in the country, you're the only black person, you tend to get spidey senses of when someone is interacting with you led by bias. And the two lovely ladies that dealt with our interview were definitely harboring some bias by what they said, how they said it, the choice of language they chose, and in the end we just thought, if they weren't welcoming to us to even apply, because it was saying all these different things to kind of deter us from applying, we just thought, oh, just leave it. Again, this was council led. Someone said to me, oh, don't go to the council led one, go private for adopting, because it's a lot better.
And I remember my dad. I don't know if you were there with that conversation, but I remember my dad saying to me, and I might have told you this actually, the trouble my parents had trying to adopt my two brothers, because they, for whatever reason, at the time, this is 50 years ago, they didn't think they were suitable, and both occasions my dad very nearly took them to court, because the children had been put with them, my brothers had been put with them, everything was going fine, and then for no apparent reason they pulled the plug, and both times my dad had to take legal action to actually keep my brothers. And our experience then, now when we thought about it, and it's like, this just doesn't make any sense. Do you want parents for these children or not, regardless of race or?
It just seems with the whole adoption process, they just act as, I think they're looking for something specific, and the specific that they want, they can't put on the poster. So when they put this image out there of what they want, they see what they get, and at those interviews, they then deter who they don't want, and encourage who they do want. Which, from our experience in the couple of, I think we went on to maybe three first interviews, it seems to be white, male or female, around the age of, say, 50 plus, 50, 55 plus. that again, this is not official stuff. This is just from our experience that we've experienced, and talking to others that have been on that journey. That's what they've seen for the majority, obviously.
And for the record, both my brothers are of ethnic background.
Yeah.
And I'm white. Sorry, my webcam doesn't work. Sorry.
Yeah. So yeah, I definitely think that with parents with I definitely think that if money wasn't an issue, and it was between a family that looked like mine and a family that was white, I definitely think that there is bias that runs through adopting children, adopting black children. I definitely think that they would want they push for a white family than a black family to adopt, which I don't understand why that is, because a lot of the children well, at one point I remember the lady said, "Have you tried Luton?"
Oh gosh, yeah, I remember that.
Before we didn't even mention anything about race. This was one of the language things I was
Yes,
picking up on,
yeah,
you see, because I just found that for people who did a huge advert wanting people to come in, she was telling us a lot of like really, barriers, and explaining like hurdles and hurdles and hurdles, and it didn't seem like a very encouraging meeting. And then I said to her, "Oh yes," she just said out of the blue, "Have you tried Luton?" And I thought, this Luton always comes up, and I thought, why do people keep saying about, "Oh, have you come from Luton? Did you move from Luton?" And I thought, I get what they're alluding to. Obviously, this area is majority white, and they naturally think that someone who is melanated would have moved from a melanated area, either London or Luton, which is close by. Yeah, so that kind of language thing I was picking up on during the process, and I just thought, yeah, I think we're going to leave it here. So we just deterred us, and we just left it at that then, because we just thought, obviously they're just not looking for a family that looks like us. So yes, Amy, I suppose we've definitely experienced that barrier there.
Kirsty, your hand is up. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, no, I was just thinking on that with the difficulties with fostering and stuff, if we've got any idea, we can find out maybe like the figures on maybe how many people from different ethnicities are going into that, because it seems like it's not going to change until the level of representation within the appropriate professions change. If you're saying there's a lot of white older social workers, it feels like maybe need to find a way to encourage people of different backgrounds into those professions to help then make the matches between the foster parents and the foster children connect better.
Yeah, I think maybe BVL can make connections with with, I can't remember the exact name, what they are. That is Hertfordshire Foster and Adoption. I can't remember the exact name, but just making connections with that, because I noticed in their imagery they will either use they use a lot of members of the Black community, or a Black child, etc. But going to their interperson, you see majority white, and I just wondered why that was. Either the Black community that would be drawn, or not drawn to it, show up and are deterred away, and white people are encouraged if there's something there, or there's a reason why that's happening. But yeah, it would be good to let's find out. That's what BVL are here for, to find out those stats and see where we can help on that front.
Does anyone else have any other contributions? No. So is now the time to wrap up the meeting, unless Michaela, do you have anything else to say?
I don't think we have any other updates as far as institution. I would hope that a couple of police officers will be here tonight, but again, I know people are busy, and we probably didn't get the message, the reminder till very late. But for those of you who are watching online, I really, if you do watch this and you want to contribute to any one of our meetings, you can just email us. Amy will give you the emails. But yes, please do email us at any point. It's not just for once a month. We're here for your venting, your, you know, whatever you find out there, and we will research, we'll find out. That's what we're here for. Please do use us and share your voice. Your voice does matter, and it's not just a talking place to come and talk. We are actively pushing for change. So these meetings are not just to come sit and moan. We action on what we're talking about, and we work with others to manifest projects to help our community. So please do share if anything you've heard tonight has moved you. Thank you, Amy.
Okay. Thank you to everyone who attended and contributed today, and a special thank you to Glenn Russell for delivering a talk. Black Voice Letchworth is committed to actions. If you have been delegated an action today, please follow through. The minutes and record the minutes, which I've been writing in the chat, and recordings and the recording of this meeting will be sent to you, provided that we have your email address. If you haven't had a chance to give us that, you can just email us at blackvoiceletchworth@gmail.com or at bvlinquiries@gmail.com. We look forward to seeing you at the next meeting in November, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you very much all. Bye.
Thanks very much. Thanks for the invite. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Glenn.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye, everyone.